In this video, we're going to take a look at how Sampler handles multi-sampling. So here I have this Fat Heavy drone pad, which is a sampler preset, and you can see that the parameters are sort of adjusted here. It's not making use of the oscillator or pitch envelope, but it does have some heavy filter action going on here, as well as some LFO modulation and some MIDI modulations. So there's a lot of movement to this, and if I play it, you'll hear what I'm talking about. There we go. Now, if I click this zone button, this window pops up above it, and what you're actually looking at here is that there are 4 separate samples for this multi-sample. And I can click on each one, and the display below will change, so you can see that they're all different. I can solo one, and let's listen to it. Very similar sounds, but altogether they have a layered effect that's superior to each one individually. Now we are looking at the key zone editor, and what this tells us is that each sample is able to be played across the entire range of the keyboard. These green lines extend the entire length of the keyboard. You can see all the way up to G8 and down to C-2. So no matter what note you play, you will be triggering all 4 samples. Now if you look very closely, you'll see the letter R in some spots, and that indicates the root note. So the root note of 2 of the samples is G#2, and the root note of the other 2 samples is G#3. So they're an octave apart, thus giving it a thicker sound. If I click on the VEL button, that's the Velocity Zone Editor, and this is similar to the Key Zone Editor, except it deals with velocities. Now, velocity is how hard or soft you press a key, or you can also control the velocity in a clip. If I get a note here, for instance, C2, and I bring this up, this little stem right here controls the velocity. I can make it quieter or louder, and you can hear that the timbre of the sound changes as I make those adjustments. But each one of these samples plays over the entire range of velocity from 0 to 127. There's also the Sample Select Editor, and in this case, all 4 sounds go over the entire range. There's nothing to select here. Now this is a fairly simple sound, but I wanted to start with it because when I show you the next sound, you'll say, wow, that's really complicated. So if I go to my presets here, to bass, and let's go to electric bass open. As you can see, there's a very long sample of bass playing here. It's like over a half an hour long, this file, okay? And this is a very narrow slice we're looking at. So that should tell you something right there. There are also a few macros included, and in fact, there are 2 sampler chains here. So if I go to off, we see a much shorter sample, but with lots of different spikes in it, and then open. So what we're essentially looking at here is 2 instances of sampler put together, and each one has many samples included in it. If I open up my zone tab, you'll see all of the individual samples that make up the electric bass open sound. So for each note, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 samples that cover a range of notes in the bottom here. This set of 6 covers F, this goes up to F sharp, G, and so on. And so there are just like dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of samples individually processed, And the reason that they do this is so that the bass really sounds like a real bass. Okay? If you're trying to emulate an acoustic instrument, it's like the most complicated thing in the world. Honestly, you're better off just getting a bass. But if you don't have that option, this is a great alternative. And they have painstakingly gone through and recreated this. So if you play F, you're only going to trigger this certain sample. If I click on it, you can see that the sample editor is down here. If I go up a few notes, now that's the note they've isolated, and it looks like they are playing D2. Now, why are there stacks of notes? Well, let's go to the velocity zone editor, and you can see that at very soft velocities, certain notes play. At medium velocities, other notes play. And at loud velocities, yet other notes play. And these represent the 6 notes you see in each stack. So if you are playing the note F at a very low volume level, you get one sample. If you play it at a medium volume level, you get another sample. And if you play it at a loud volume level, you get another sample. This technology is called velocity switching, or it's also called velocity zone editing, choosing, mapping, whatever. The off category here in this chain as a whole other set of bass notes. And the off is when a bass player plucks the bass like with her finger and then lets go of that. There's like a little tiny sound. And they've recreated that as well on every note. Very painstaking process. Kudos to the Ableton people. But as you can see, when you are trying to emulate an acoustic instrument, it's very tough, and we benefit from that because it sounds like a real bass. I mean, it sounds like a real bass.